you ever look at your life and realize you don't even recognize the person you used to be. It's like somewhere along the way, you quietly shifted. The things that used to excite you don't anymore. The people you used to chase feel like strangers now, and the version of you that once fit perfectly into your old world suddenly feels like it doesn't belong anywhere. It's a strange kind of growth, the kind that sneaks up on you. One day you just wake up and notice that your silence speaks louder than your explanations, and your peace matters more than being understood. But here's the thing no one tells you about growth. It doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like loss. You start missing your old habits, your old energy, even your old chaos, because that version of you, as flawed as they were, felt familiar, safe, predictable. And yet something deep inside you whispers that you've outgrown it, that you can't go back, even if you wanted to. This video isn't about who you were, it's about who you're becoming. By the end of this, you'll know if you've truly evolved, or if you've just been changing on the surface, because outgrowing your old self isn't about pretending to be someone new. It's about shedding everything that no longer fits the person you're meant to be. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing. But it's also the most beautiful thing you'll ever do for yourself. So stay with me. Because as we go through these signs, you might realize something powerful, that the version of you you've been mourning was never meant to stay. You were always meant to become something greater. The quiet awakening growth isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like winning, smiling, or achieving more. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone in your room, staring at the ceiling, wondering why things that once made you happy now feel empty. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that the version of you who used to love certain people, certain places, certain routines, just doesn't exist anymore. And that realization hurts, even when you know it's right. Nobody really talks about how painful it can be to outgrow your old self. You start to question everything. Why don't I enjoy this anymore? Why can't I connect like I used to? It's not that you've become cold or distant. It's that your soul is shifting. You're no longer feeding off the same energy you once did. And that's confusing when you're still surrounded by people who expect you to stay the same. Growth feels like losing yourself because, in a way, you are. You're losing the parts of you that settled, that tolerated, that tried to fit in where you were never meant to belong. You're letting go of patterns that once protected you, but now only hold you back. That's why it feels heavy, because you're mourning an identity that carried you through some of your hardest seasons. But what if that's exactly how it's supposed to feel? What if this quiet discomfort is proof that you're finally aligning with who you're meant to become? The truth is, transformation rarely feels like peace at first. It feels like confusion, like standing between two worlds, one that no longer fits and another that hasn't fully appeared yet. So if you've been feeling lost lately, if you've been questioning who you're becoming, you're not broken. You're evolving. This is your quiet awakening, the sacred, messy middle between who you were and who you're meant to be. The turning point, outgrowing your old self, isn't a loss. It's a rebirth. But most people don't realize that until they've already shed so much of who they were that they barely recognize themselves. You see, we grow up thinking transformation is this bright, shining process, like leveling up, like success. But the truth, it's much quieter, much messier. It's the process of dying to the old version of you, piece by piece, so the new one can finally breathe. Think about it. Every time you've truly grown, it wasn't during the easy moments. It was during heartbreak, confusion, disappointment, and solitude. The kind of growth that doesn't announce itself with fireworks, but with silence. You don't see it happening, but suddenly you notice you react differently, you care differently, you choose differently. That's the sign of real evolution. Not the kind that looks good on the outside, but the kind that rewires who you are on the inside. Outgrowing your old self isn't about abandoning who you were. It's about returning to who you were before the world taught you to shrink. It's peeling away the layers of fear, doubt, and approval seeking you built just to survive. It's realizing that the person you used to be was never wrong. They just did the best they could with what they knew. And now you know better. You've lived, you've hurt, you've learned. And because of that, you've changed. But here's where it gets real. Not everyone will understand this version of you. Some people will miss your old self because it was easier for them to handle. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have. But it's not change out of pride. It's change out of growth. And that's something to be proud of. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 signs that show you've outgrown your old self. Not the superficial changes, but the deep, invisible shifts that tell you you've truly evolved. Because once you recognize them, you'll stop doubting your progress and start realizing you're not falling apart. You're being reborn. You no longer fit where you used to. One of the first signs that you've outgrown your old self is that the places, people, and habits that once felt like home now feel too small. You walk into rooms you used to love, and suddenly the energy feels off. Conversations that once entertained you now drain you. The same jokes don't hit, the same circles don't inspire you, and the same patterns don't bring peace anymore. It's not that you've become arrogant or distant. It's that your spirit no longer fits inside the same walls it used to call home. When you grow, your frequency changes. You begin to crave depth over distraction, honesty over comfort, peace over chaos. And that shift quietly separates you from what no longer matches that vibration. You'll notice it most in your relationships. People who once felt like your tribe start to feel like a memory. Not because they're bad, but because you've stopped feeding the version of you that needed their validation. It's a strange kind of discomfort, isn't it? To look around and realize that what used to make you feel alive now makes you feel stuck. You start to question yourself. Why do I feel different? Why can't I connect like I used to? But that discomfort isn't something to fear. It's a signal. It's life's way of whispering, you're evolving. When a snake outgrows its skin, it doesn't apologize for shedding. It doesn't stay trapped because it fears the process. It simply understands that growth requires release. The same goes for you. You can't stay small to keep others comfortable. You can't dim your energy to belong to a version of life that no longer fits your spirit. So if you've been feeling out of place lately, don't fight it. That feeling isn't rejection, it's redirection. You're not losing connection, you're creating space for alignment. The truth is, you haven't changed for the worse, you've expanded. And expansion will always make the old feel tight. You choose peace over attention. There was a time when attention felt like validation. When being noticed, included, or praised gave you that temporary rush, the feeling that you mattered. But now it's different. The things that used to excite you, the arguments, the drama, the need to prove yourself, they don't spark the same fire anymore. In fact, they exhaust you. Because at some point, you realize that peace feels better than being seen. That silence feels better than applause. That walking away is sometimes the loudest way to speak. You've reached a stage where you no longer crave noise, you crave calm. You've learned that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every opinion needs your reaction. Maturity teaches you that protecting your peace is more powerful than proving your point. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally intelligent. You know when to engage and when to let go. You've learned that not everything that demands your attention deserves it. It's funny. The world glorifies attention like it's the ultimate form of success. But real growth shows you something deeper. Peace is the real flex. There's nothing louder than a person who refuses to be triggered by chaos. Nothing stronger than someone who can sit in silence and still feel whole. You start to see the difference between being noticed and being fulfilled. And you choose fulfillment every time. When you choose peace, you stop chasing. You stop trying to convince others of your worth because you finally know it. You stop reacting to every misunderstanding, every insult, every moment that once would have pulled you into emotional chaos. You simply smile, breathe, and move on. Because now your energy is sacred, and not everyone gets access to it. So if you find yourself craving quiet more than attention, don't mistake that for losing your spark. It means you've mastered your emotions. You've stopped needing the world to validate your light, because you've learned how to glow on your own. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. There comes a moment in your growth when your silence stops being weakness and becomes strength. You no longer feel the urge to explain every choice you make, defend every boundary you set, or prove why you've changed. You just live differently. You move differently. Because you finally understand that people who truly see you don't need explanations, and those who demand them will never understand you anyway. When you're still attached to your old self, you crave validation. You want others to get it, to approve, to clap for your evolution. But as you grow, that need fades. You realize that peace isn't found in being understood. It's found in being okay even when you're not. You stop over explaining because you've learned that your truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs alignment. There's something powerful about reaching a point where your decisions are no longer open for debate. You start saying no without guilt and yes without needing to justify it. You walk away from people, jobs, and situations without writing long explanations that start with, "It's not you, it's me." Because at this stage, you're no longer trying to be liked. You're trying to be real. And realness often offends those still addicted to comfort. Silence becomes your confidence. It's not that you've stopped caring. It's that you've stopped wasting energy convincing others to care. You've realized that understanding is optional, but peace is essential. You don't explain your healing, your boundaries, your distance, or your decisions. You let your growth speak louder than your words ever could. This is where true freedom begins. When you finally stop performing, when you stop feeling the need to justify your evolution to people who benefited from your smaller self, you no longer argue your value, you embody it. And that quiet certainty, that's what scares and inspires others the most. So if you found yourself growing quieter lately, don't mistake it for disconnection. It's self-trust. You no longer need to be understood because you finally understand yourself. You're drawn to solitude instead of company. There comes a point in your evolution when you stop fearing being alone and start craving it. The noise, the constant conversations, the endless scrolling, the need to always be around someone, it all starts to feel heavy. You begin to realize that solitude isn't loneliness, it's self-alignment. It's the space where you meet yourself without distraction, where you hear your thoughts clearly and feel your emotions without numbing them. And once you experience that peace, chaos no longer feels like home. For so long, many of us confuse being alone with being abandoned. We think silence means emptiness. But when you start healing, you discover that silence is actually sacred. It's where your soul recharges, where your intuition gets louder, and where your energy resets. You start to enjoy your own company, not because you've given up on people, but because you've finally built a home within yourself. This shift can feel strange at first. Friends might call you distant. People might think you're isolating yourself. But what they don't see is the quiet work happening inside you. You're no longer seeking connection out of fear. You're choosing it from fullness. You'd rather sit alone with truth than surround yourself with noise that distracts you from it. That's not loneliness. That's evolution. In solitude, you begin to realize how much of your old life was built around needing others to fill your voids. Now, you fill them yourself. You read, reflect, walk, breathe. And in those simple moments, you find clarity that company could never give you. You're not running from people, you're returning to yourself. So if you find yourself turning down plans, craving quiet, or choosing your own presence over the crowd. That's not a problem to fix. That's your soul finding alignment. Because sometimes the loudest growth happens in the silence of your own company. And when you learn to love that peace, you'll never again settle for noise that costs you your calm. You've stopped chasing. You've started attracting. There's a beautiful moment in growth when you stop running after everything. People, opportunities, validation, outcomes. And you simply allow. You stop chasing and start attracting. You realize that what's meant for you will never require you to beg, prove, or force. It will flow. Because alignment always feels lighter than pursuit. When you become who you're meant to be, what's meant for you finds you. Effortlessly, naturally, and in perfect timing. In your old self, you might have believed that effort alone could make things happen. You thought the harder you tried, the more you'd be loved, accepted, or successful. But chasing often came from fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. Growth teaches you something softer but stronger, that peace is more magnetic than pressure. That when your energy is calm, the right things are drawn to it. You start to see how forcing connections only creates resistance, how begging for clarity only creates confusion, how chasing love only leads to exhaustion. The new you understands that alignment attracts what chasing repels. So instead of overthinking and overdoing, you learn to trust. You trust that your energy, your presence, and your truth are enough. You trust that the universe, God, or whatever you believe in, knows when to deliver what's meant for you. This shift isn't about laziness or indifference. It's about surrender. It's choosing to move with intention instead of desperation. It's showing up, doing your part, and letting go of what's beyond your control. Because when you stop chasing, you make room for peace. And from that peace, everything you deserve begins to appear. So if you've noticed yourself becoming less eager to chase and more open to receive, that's not giving up, that's growing up. You're learning that real power doesn't come from forcing life to happen, it comes from trusting that it already is. The moment you step fully into who you are, everything that matches that energy can finally find you. The realization outgrowing your old self isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Before expectations shaped you, before fear silenced you, before you learned to shrink just to be accepted. Growth isn't about adding more layers. It's about peeling them back until what's left is real. The person underneath all the noise, the pain, and the pretending. That's the version of you that's always been waiting to be rediscovered. When you look back, you'll realize that every loss, every ending, every uncomfortable shift was never meant to break you. It was meant to strip away what wasn't truly you. Losing people taught you boundaries. Losing comfort taught you strength. Losing yourself taught you value. Every moment of confusion, every phase of loneliness, every quiet night you thought you were stuck. That was transformation in disguise. You weren't falling apart, you were falling into alignment. You've outgrown your old self because you've learned too much to go back. You've seen your own resilience. You've survived situations you once thought would destroy you. You've learned that peace doesn't mean life is perfect. It means you've stopped allowing chaos to control you. That's not change, that's evolution. And it's something to be proud of. There's something powerful about realizing you don't need to become anyone else to feel whole. You just need to come home to yourself. That's what this entire journey has been. A homecoming. Every sign, every shift, every uncomfortable realization has been guiding you back to your essence. The truest, rawest version of you. So when people say you've changed, smile. Because they're right, you've changed back. Back to your truth. Back to your peace. Back to the version of you that no longer seeks, but simply is. You've outgrown your old self, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring differently. With more intention, more self-respect, more love. And that's the most beautiful transformation there is. The becoming growth isn't always beautiful. It's not candlelight, soft music, and perfect journal pages. Sometimes it's tears you hide, questions you can't answer, and nights that feel endless. It's standing in the middle of everything you thought you wanted and realizing it no longer feels right. It's messy, confusing, and often invisible to everyone but you. But that doesn't make it any less sacred. The pain you feel during growth isn't punishment. It's purification. It's your old self breaking apart so your true self can finally breathe. You're not doing life wrong because it feels heavy right now. You're shedding. You're making room. Growth is rarely glamorous because it demands honesty. And honesty isn't always pretty. It forces you to confront your patterns, your fears, your attachments. It asks you to walk away from what you once begged to keep. That takes courage most people will never see. But it's the kind of courage that changes everything. You're learning how to trust yourself again. How to move even when you don't have the map. How to sit in uncertainty and still choose peace. And that's something to be proud of. Because growth isn't about having it all figured out. It's about showing up for yourself even when you don't. It's about believing that every struggle has purpose, even when you can't see it yet. So if you feel lost right now, if your life feels unfamiliar, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Let the old fall away without guilt. You're not behind, you're not broken. You're becoming. You're stepping into a version of yourself that can finally hold the kind of peace, clarity, and love you've always deserved. Remember this, the hardest parts of growth often lead to the most peaceful places. You may not see it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that this chapter, the one that feels uncertain and uncomfortable, was the one that changed everything. Keep going. You're not falling apart. You're unfolding. Your turn to reflect, so tell me, which of these signs hit you hardest? Or which one are you living through right now? Maybe it's that quiet feeling that you don't fit in the same places anymore. Maybe you're realizing peace means more to you than being noticed. Maybe you've grown tired of explaining yourself to people who never really listened. Or maybe you found a strange comfort in your own company, learning that solitude isn't loneliness. It's strength. Wherever you are in your journey, I want you to know this, you're not alone. Everyone reaches that point where life starts to feel unfamiliar, where the things that once defined you start to fade. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also the clearest sign that something deeper is awakening inside you. This is the part of your story where you learn what your soul has been trying to say all along. So don't fight it. Don't rush to fill the silence. Just listen. Because that feeling, that strange mix of confusion and calm, that's your transformation speaking. Take a moment to reflect on where you are. What have you let go of recently that once felt impossible to release? What are you craving more of now? Peace, truth, clarity. These moments of realization are powerful because they show you exactly how far you've come, even if you haven't noticed it yet. Growth rarely looks dramatic. Sometimes it's just choosing not to react. Choosing to walk away, choosing yourself. So I want to hear from you. Really think about it. Which of these signs describes your current season? Drop it in the comments, not just to share your story, but to remind someone else that they're not the only one evolving. Because when we speak from honesty, we connect through truth. And maybe your words will be the light someone else needs to recognize their own growth. The invitation to evolve, if you're done questioning your growth and ready to start owning your evolution, hit subscribe. Because this is where healing turns into power. This space isn't about pretending to have it all together. It's about understanding that growth is messy, emotional, and deeply human. It's about finding meaning in the moments that once broke you and realizing that every scar you carry has shaped the strength you stand in now. You've come too far to keep doubting your progress. You're not the person you were. And that's something to celebrate, not question. This channel is for the ones who feel everything deeply, for the ones who have walked through the fire and still managed to rise. even when no one claps for them. It's for the people who are learning to trust themselves again, who've stopped chasing approval and started chasing peace. Every video here is a reminder that you're not alone in this process, that your evolution has purpose, and that your growth deserves to be honored, not hidden. So if something in this video spoke to you, if you felt that tug in your chest, that quiet voice saying, "This is me right now," that's your sign. Stay, subscribe, because your story isn't done yet. You're in the middle of becoming everything you were meant to be. Here, we don't just talk about healing, we embody it. We turn pain into perspective and confusion into clarity. Every week, you'll find words that remind you of your strength, your worth, and your light. So if you're ready to stop surviving and start evolving, hit that subscribe button, join the journey, and let's grow together. Because this is more than just a channel. This is a community where your healing becomes your power.